Hi, I'm Sally from Stitch Along with Sally, and this is my dog Georgie. And today we're going to talk about needlepoint belts, and in particular finishing those belts. Now, I've been working in a needlepoint shop for about 6 years, and I teach lessons there. And this is still a topic that a lot of people ask questions about because they want to make sure it's perfect, they want to make sure they have the right size, all totally understandable. So I just wanted to talk about it today and think about like what you can do when you're shopping for your belt, what you can do while you're stitching your belt to make sure that you got that right size, and then all the things you need to know for finishing that belt. Now, I don't have a belt on me, but I did just finish a dog collar for Georgie, so I'm going to use that as our example because the concepts are kind of the same, if that helps. So here's what we're gonna do. Before I even thought about buying a dog collar for my dog, and I did get this maybe like 5 years ago and it's just now finished, so sometimes these things take time, but before I thought about it, I was like, okay, what is the finishing process? So when I'm buying this canvas, and it's a gorgeous canvas, it's from Susan Roberts. I'll hold it a lot closer so you can see it's got a little crown on it because Georgie is a total icon and she deserves crown. And so when I bought this canvas, I asked a few questions ahead of time to make sure that I was ready to stitch this canvas. The first question I asked is about the finishing formula. So whenever you're doing something super size specific where you need the end product to be a certain size, like a belt or a dog collar, you probably have to do some measuring in advance to determine how much you're going to stitch. Now, I asked about it and I wrote down the finishing formula for my shop's clip collar particular finish. So Georgie already wears a clip collar. I borrowed it from her so you can see it's pretty comfortable for her. I thought this would be a good way to finish her collar. They also had a leather option. I just didn't like the leather option as much. I thought this was the way to go. So that's the option I asked about. And they gave me the finishing formula, and I wrote it down in my notebook before I left the shop, which is the length of the collar for this shop. And each finishing formula is going to be different for every shop and every finisher. So always double check. Every time you're like, oh, I think this finisher would be really cool. Ask them for their finishing formula so you know how to measure and what you need to stitch. So in this case, my dog collar is actually, this is Georgie's, it's 12 inches long. And my shop that's going to finish her dog collar canvas told me to take this length, 12 inches, and they said to measure from the prongs to the base of this clip here. So this length is 12 inches. Take that, subtract 2 inches, and then stitch that length. So when I am done stitching here, which I am, I'm going to turn this in tomorrow at my local shop. But I've done my stitching here, and this is 10 inches of stitching. So that will give the right finish size when it comes out on the end. And it's really important that you get the right finish size. You don't want to give someone something and then have it not fit. Belts have a lot more flexibility, I will say, than a clip style dog collar, because this, when they do this finish, they don't have like the buckle so you can adjust the size. Belts, the way my shop finishes belts and the way I know a few other shops finish belts as well, is that the size you're choosing is going to be just one hole in the belt, and there are going to be quite a few holes on that loop. So you'll have some options, but that's how I wrote it down. And the reason I always write it down before I leave the shop is because things change, bodies change. We might need to change at some point in the process. These things actually take quite a while to do. Even this 10-inch collar, as someone who actually like regularly spends a lot of time needlepointing and in the needlepoint community, I started this in September. And so it took me a few months of off and on stitching to complete it. 10 inches is by no means the largest dog collar. I had someone bring in a canvas that they stitched for a Bernese Mountain Dog. So this isn't the largest collar, but it can take some time. And so I love to write down the finishing formula just to give myself a sense as I'm going of, okay, let me just keep measuring Georgie's collar. She hasn't really changed at all in this time, but then I can just randomly take off her collar and make sure we're still at 12 inches, so my 10 inches of stitching is still accurate. So that's the first thing I'm going to write down before I even leave the shop, is the finishing formula. For belts, it could be anything like, oh, take measure from the prong to the most used hole and then subtract 6 inches. I can promise you that almost no belt finisher finishes based on waist size. I have not found anyone who does it. If you have, please let me know in the comments. But it doesn't happen frequently. So you want to make sure you're measuring their belt just to get the right size, because we do have a number of people who've come in and like, this happens to me quite a bit, where someone might come in and then say like, oh, I talked to him and he said he's a 36-inch waist. A 36-inch waist is not always a 36-inch needlepoint belt. So you want to make sure you measure based on your finisher's rules, because that's how you're going to make sure you get the right size, and write down that finishing formula. Once I've written down the finishing formula, the other thing I'm going to ask them for is a finishing estimate. Some places might not do it. My shop does it. I'm more than happy if you come in to my shop and ask me, I'll help you get a finishing estimate. The reason I always ask is because the money's gonna be due at some point. Like, it might be due at the beginning of the process. I might have to put down a deposit at the beginning, pay later. For the rest, the whole total might be due at the end. But at some point, money's gonna have to leave my account. And it's not worth it to go into credit card debt for needlepoint. So I would rather have an idea of how much money I need to have saved by the time my project is done. So then when I get to finishing, I just take it out of savings and I'm done. I don't even have to think about it. I've saved appropriately for my project. The other thing that I would like to think about is like, when you're asking for an estimate, I would also be clear that it is an estimate, because this 10-inch canvas, if you take a belt and it is a 36-inch belt and then you have to subtract something like 6 inches, then you still have to stitch a whole 30 inches of a belt, and that may take you a while. So it gives you a good idea of how much you have to save, but I wouldn't sit there and say like, oh, I came a year ago and you've since raised your prices. That's all it is to give you an idea. So you're somewhat prepared when the bill comes. Now, once I've got my size, my estimates, I feel good about what I need to do. If it's something really time sensitive, you might want to ask like, typically how long is it taking? Like if you really want it for someone's birthday or graduation or something, that's always a good question to ask, just so you have an idea of when you need to turn it in to get it finished back by. I would give yourself at least a month if you really are like, I must give this finished belt to someone at graduation. Definitely take whatever number they give you plus a month at least. And that gives you some time, and it also saves you a lot of stress. But once I've got this item, then we're gonna get like, now I've got this item, we're gonna start stitching. The threads that are gonna be sold to you most commonly for belts are some kind of wool for the background. And this is another good case because this is a wool. This is Vineyard Silk Merino. It's kind of a controversial thread. Some people really, really don't like it. Some people really think it's like the best thing ever. I just don't honestly care about it. Like, I don't feel strongly either way. It's a wool. Wool's gonna be the most durable. It's gonna last a really long time. I have seen belts that were stitched with wool 50 plus years ago that then get passed down to grandchildren. Like, if you want an heirloom, wool is gonna be the way to go. There are some other threads you can do. Impressions is one, Belluso, Appleton's wool. If you don't like Vineyard Silk Merino, for whatever reason, it's tangly, it's annoying, whatever you're feeling about it, you really, really don't like it, a strandable wool like Appleton's or Belluso can be a great alternative. I personally like Appleton's just because there's more of it. It just feels that way. The skeins of Belluso look really small to me compared to Appleton's, so that might be a scam. That might be like a placebo effect, but I've stitched this in wool. The icons you'll see in belts, a lot of times people will recommend pearl cotton. Depending on what design you've chosen, there might be a lot of colors, so pearl cotton can be really great. Also, if you're doing sports teams, a lot of shops, particularly in my area, know exactly what DMC colors match to sport team colors. So if you're doing a logo belt for your local baseball team, your local football team, they probably have like a chart of what they can do. At least the shops in my area can always tell you, oh, you want to stitch this baseball team? Here's the perfect red. I did stitch these icons in Glisten, and really, honestly, like, it's something that I just thought would be pretty. I've never tried it before, so I can report back on how it holds up on a dog. I feel like a dog is going to be the ultimate test of how these thread choices are going to hold up on time, because she likes to roll around in leaves. So we'll see how it holds up, but I just thought it was really pretty, and I wanted something sparkly for a crown. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, most likely you're going to get some DMC pearl cotton for those icons. And if you have like 10 or 20 colors between all the icons on the belt, or all the things going on in that belt design, I would also do pearl cotton, because it's also it's not very expensive. So that can be a great option. Now you've got your belt and you've got your things. The other thing that you might want to do before you leave the shop, even if you have your finishing formula, is ask them to mark how far you're going to stitch and help you center that design. So I'm very fortunate in my design for this dog collar that it is very much has a center. So when I saw 10 inches, I just pulled up my tape measure, I lined up the 5 on the center of the design, and then I went to 0 and 10 and I marked both sides. If you're not comfortable with that, or you just want to make sure it's centered, definitely ask your shop to help you mark where you need to stitch. If you get a custom design from a lot of shops for a belt, they might put like the actual size that it was designed to on the actual canvas. So they might tell you like, oh, you needed a 38-inch belt, so this is your strip. But definitely also mark those sides so you know where to stop. As you can see by what I've stitched, which is the purple, and then the pink, which was the painted choice of the canvas, I didn't need a ton of this canvas, so marking it made sure that I didn't just like keep going, which is something I have done. It's just keep stitching without even thinking about it. So definitely mark your canvas as well and ask them to mark it. Then you can just quickly check your measurements as you go along. And particularly with belts, people's bodies change over time. So if you're like, oh, we need to make it a little smaller, I need to subtract an inch, then you can always go back with your finishing formula and start deducting things. I will say, if you start cutting inwards as you're stitching, let's say you're stitching it for someone who has lost a little weight and now they're gonna go, you wanna go like 2 inches smaller, those leather tabs on the sides that typically cut into the needlepoint design are about 1.5 inches. So if you're cutting into your own needlepoint design, you're saying like, okay, I actually need to stop here now, I've remeasured, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and you have like a monogram or some icon within 1.5 inches of that edge, it may be covered up, and that might just be something you need to come to terms with, and that's okay. But always follow that 1.5 inch rule. For if you're also designing your own belts, I would give yourself 1.5 inches on each side, or if it's a repetition pattern, who cares if the pattern just keeps repeating. But if you're like, oh, I want the logos, I want the monograms, I want something, give yourself 1.5 inch clearance to make sure that that leather doesn't cut into it. That way, all that's cutting into it is like solid, boring wool colors, whatever. So you're gonna stitch, and you're gonna stitch a really long strip, and that's okay. And then when you turn it in, before you turn it in, I would double check the measurements one more time. So I'm gonna turn this in tomorrow. I have pulled out Georgie's collar. She only has one collar, so I just borrowed this off of her. I've measured it, it's still 12 inches. Now I just need to go back. I've double checked my measurements here on the canvas. I'm still at 10 inches, so I'm confident going into the shop tomorrow that this is the correct length for what I needed it to be. You can always double check these things. Also, because some finishers, like depending on the style of the belt buckle, you may have to like add or subtract things. So when you're making your notes, I would also add the finishing style you've chosen. For instance, like some shops have a brass buckle and a regular buckle, and those require 2 different finishing formulas. So write down literally every detail beforehand. Also, because then when you go into the shop, you can just read it off. It makes it so much simpler. The only thing that you might change your mind on later on is leather colors with belts, because they do have a number of leather colors, and as you stitch something, you might go, oh, actually, like, the more I think about it, the more I do like the wine leather or the dark brown leather or something I hadn't thought about. And that's also totally okay. So you can always write down an idea of those things, but sometimes I feel like I'm more able to make those kinds of decisions when I actually have like the stitched product in front of me and I can look at all the options. But when you have those finishing conversations at the beginning, definitely bring a notebook. I have a notebook that I bring with me a lot of places. It has a lot of needlepoint notes in it. And when I'm planning out a project, I make as many notes as possible about how I want to finish it, what I want it to look like, what I need to be prepared for timing wise or monetarily, and that's all I need to know. There's also something that if you're far away from your local needlepoint shop, you live somewhere where there isn't even a local needlepoint shop, it can be really, really helpful to have a person to talk those things through with you. So it might be something where you call your needlepoint shop because you finally pulled out the belt canvas you're really excited about, or you can also please drop a comment down below. That is why I created this channel, is to share these things and teach people. So please drop a comment down below if you have any belt questions, anything like that. And the other thing I will always remind you, which is the thing I say every time with finishing, and I highly encourage you to do this, is if you do not like the finished product, do not leave the shop with it. And it's okay to not like it, but it's really hard for the shops to fix things if you walk off with it and you come back 2 weeks later. So like I've had an ornament I picked up and like there was a little accessory on it and the accessory had fallen off. Like the finisher tried to attach it. It was one of those Studio Midwest toppers. I can try and like pop a picture up here somewhere. But the little accessory had fallen off and I was about to walk out of the shop and then I noticed it was just hanging out in the bottom of the bag. And I did not walk out of that shop. I immediately turned around and I gave it back to them. I said, please attach this. I'm sorry. Like, I would like it attached. And they were happy to fix it. So if you have a needlepoint belt and something looks wrong to you, you asked for tan leather and you got dark brown, anything like that, don't leave the shop with it. Stay, talk it through with them. Every shop I know of is happy to talk these things through with you. You just have to stay and talk with them. It is totally okay and very normal to do those things. And it's not rude or weird to ask questions if you don't like your finish. It's really hard though if you leave the shop and come back 3 weeks later to make it right. So if you don't like the finish, don't leave the shop. It's probably gonna come back beautifully if you do everything I told you in this video, which is write down your finishing formulas, get your price estimates, stitch with wool if you want to. If you don't like Vineyard Silk Merino, please go for a strandable wool. And also if you don't like it, tell whoever's helping you in the shop so that they don't recommend it to you. Make sure you have all of your numbers written down. Keep checking your measurements throughout the stitching process. Be aware of your 1.5 inch clearance. And yeah, you should be pretty good to go. So if you have any belt finishing questions, please drop them down in the comments down below, because that is why I'm creating this channel, is so that you all can ask these questions from someone who's been working in the field for a really long time. But yeah, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Bye.